All right, we are live. So the question today is the San Diego housing market bottoming out? Based on the two bidding wars that I just got in within the last hour, I'm saying it's heating back up. And I know that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So if you have any consideration in buying a house in the near future here in San Diego County, this is definitely the episode for you. Tune in. My name is Dan Parker, your San Diego real estate resource of the Best Life Home Team. And today I am joined with my very good friend, Mr. Danny Drysdale with Intercap Lending. Danny, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing awesome, man. It's been a busy day. It's been good. Feeling the same heat in the market that you're feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that. I always appreciate having you on. I always appreciate having people on that are smarter than me because you know a lot about what's going on in the housing market. You know what's going on with interest rates. You know what's going on with the Fed funds rate. You know what's going on with inflation. So you're going to add a ton of value on this call today. For anyone that doesn't know Danny, go check his Instagram out, Danny_D_IG. Danny, I just learned today, top 1% loan originator nationwide. That's pretty damn impressive, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
But you also have just really valuable information. You're very good at like breaking it down for people, like what's actually going on in the market. What do they need to know with these crazy headlines that we're seeing all the time? You're breaking it down into very simple terms. So I appreciate that. I know a lot of other people appreciate it as well. If anyone is watching live, for anyone watching live, let us know in the comments, where are you tuning in from? I like to know where you guys are tuning in from. Usually it's like all over the US. Sometimes we get like, I have some clients from Canada right now that are under contract that found us on YouTube. We have people from Mexico, from Europe. I had a guy yesterday from Egypt call me that was wanting to buy a house in San Diego. So it's pretty wild. Let us know where you are tuning in from. Let's see where we got someone in here. Oh, we got Star Platinums in the house already, coming in from Orlando. Star Platinum, it is great to see you here today.
Welcome from Orlando.
Yeah, welcome. All right, cool. So we are absolutely going to get into housing market. That is the main thing that we want to get into today. But while people are still tuning in, there are some really cool updates and things coming soon to San Diego that, Danny, I don't even know if that you know about.
Ooh,
but I'm excited to bring them up.
Cutting edge information. Fill me in, Dan. What do we got?
I know. I don't think I even told you about all this stuff. So a couple things going on right now. Check this out. This La Jolla, which is part of the city of San Diego. Now, remember, for anyone that's listening that doesn't really know San Diego very well, you have the San Diego County is like 3.34 million people. And then the city of San Diego is about half that, more or less half that. So it's like the heart of San Diego County is the city of San Diego. But La Jolla is part of the city of San Diego. And there is a push that is going on that has happened in the past, but they're pushing again to try and turn La Jolla into its own city. So they're trying to incorporate La Jolla and pull them out of the city of San Diego. So this is, have you heard about this?
I've heard rumblings, like you said, in the past. This has come like it's been back and forth of whether they were going to do this or try to do this at times. I didn't know they were making a big push for it again. That's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what that does.
It'd be very interesting to see what that does. And basically what this article says is a couple of things. One is that with some, polling they've done, and who knows what the polls that they do, but they polled about 500 people, and 86% of the people from this poll wanted to incorporate La Jolla. So these were all residents of La Jolla. The things that this would do is it would, in theory, it would take away, or it would help the city of San Diego be more profitable or lose less money, however you want to look at it, because La Jolla would be governing themselves. La Jolla would still use some of the like ancillary services and things from the city of San Diego. And so they would be paying into the city of San Diego. And then they would govern themselves. So this is pretty interesting. You have Solana Beach, you have Encinitas that incorporated back in 1986. So it's definitely something that's happened. And I think that, we're used to the way things are and we forget that things can change. So it's going to be really interesting to see if this ends up developing into anything else.
Very interesting.
Are you a soccer fan at all, Danny?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were. So have you heard about this long shot bid here?
I've heard about it. Yes, I've been following on the news about it. I'm super hopeful. We'll see what comes from it. But yeah, I would love it. It would be awesome.
All right, so check this out. This would be a $2.5 billion Major League Soccer stadium in Chula Vista, in sports complex in Chula Vista Bayfront. This, I don't know how I can say like how massive of a deal this would be. So we have like this Chula Vista Bayfront project that's being developed, and it's going to have a hotel, and it's going to completely redesign the Bayfront down there. It's kind of a convention center. It's going to be a reason to go down to
Incredible.
Chula Vista because they don't really have like these big anchors down there to bring people on from vacation or from other parts of the county. And so to think that they could potentially put a giant, what is it? Let me see here real quick. This is a 50,000 seat stadium.
It's awesome.
That's insane. I mean, the sports arena that they're building in Point Loma, what is it, 16,000?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big project.
Yep.
And like the biggest project going on in the city of San Diego right now is the new airport Terminal 1 rebuild, which is $2.5 billion, which is a huge project. So this would be massive. It's obviously very early on in the stages, but what do you think?
I think Snapdragon here in Mission Valley is 35,000. So it's basically 35,000 plus the 16,000. I mean, that's a huge, it's a big stadium. I think it would be awesome. I think that they're doing a lot of really, really incredible development down in South Bay, what we refer to as South Bay here in San Diego. But Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, down in those areas. And I love that they're bringing some of those bigger anchors in. And I think it's going to be a spot that you can actually, there will be the draw to be able to go down there in the next 10, 15 years. It's going to be a great spot. So
we'll see. This would be all private money is what it says in this article. So it's like it basically is a private bid for $2.5 billion. I don't know how that works or who has that kind of money, but yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, I'm not a big sports guy in general, but I could only imagine this would be like an international stadium. It's on the border of Mexico. Like it would have so much draw.
The draw from
oh my
people
gosh,
would be incredible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So anyway, enough getting excited about that. Now we're getting it. We got all the good news out of the way, everybody. We're done with the good news. We're going to get into the bad, terrible news that nobody wants to hear. One is, I think it's pretty interesting because I get people all the time talking on my channel asking about Blackstone. Like, what about Blackstone? They're the reason why home prices are going up here in San Diego. And I've historically said, like, honestly, it's not something that we've experienced with single family homes, potentially with multi-unit properties, but not really with single family homes here in San Diego because they're so expensive. And this article came out essentially saying that Blackstone is buying San Diego's affordable housing, hiking up rent prices as much as like 48% in the last 2 years. This is obviously not something that many people want to see. Apparently, Blackstone purchased so many properties here in San Diego County that they are now the number 3 landlord in San Diego County. Yeah. And so this is the first article I've seen about San Diego, but I did want to mention as well, when you really start digging, like article keeps pointing to another article, keeps pointing to another article. When you really get down into it, they bought 5,800 units, but that's only 66 properties. So this absolutely, they're not inflating the cost of single family homes. They're buying these giant multi-unit properties that they're going to rent out, and then they're inflating the cost of rent. So it's not to say they won't ever buy single family homes, but that their strategy is not to like increase the single family housing market here in San Diego. It's to buy cheap, affordable housing that they can rent out to low income earners is really what their focus is.
Yep, exactly. And they're, to that point, looking at what their goal is and how they're buying these properties, they don't have the bandwidth, or they don't have the bandwidth to buy one-off individual single-family residences and manage and upkeep the landscaping and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're going in and buying these giant properties. It is crazy to see how much real estate they're buying up right now.
Scary.
If that is a sign for anybody who's wondering if you should buy real estate, talk about seeing how the rich use money and the rich get richer. If they're buying and investing in real estate right now, you should absolutely get into it as soon as you possibly can.
That's it. Should we just end it? Just mic drop it right there, and that's basically the message.
This off. Let's mic drop
message for the rest. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So moving on here, let's get out of that. We don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about inflation. Another very fun, exciting thing to talk about. So this report came out obviously inflation is still something that the Federal Reserve is working on. We're still seeing those headlines of Jerome Powell increasing the Fed funds rate, and that has continued to, well, mortgage interest rates have kind of been a little bit all over the place over the last couple of months, but inflation is something that we need to get under control. It seems like it's starting to get under control nationwide, but when you're actually breaking it down, this study did city by city, and they actually put San Diego and Carlsbad as the top 15 cities where we're seeing inflation based on the most recent consumer price index. So the interesting thing I thought about this, so they list all the cities here, is they're all over the place. I thought they'd be like mostly one state or another, but we have look at Scottsdale, Arizona, Seattle, Tacoma, what is this? Bellevue, Washington, Georgia, Florida, Texas, California. Like, we're talking all over the place. But when you come to San Diego, we're number 13 on the list. We're at CPI, or Consumer Price Index change last month versus 1 year ago. We're at about a 5% increase. So not quite as bad as some of these other places. What are your thoughts on that, Danny? I know that this is something that you follow a lot. Like, what do you think are some of the main drivers as to why it's more expensive here than other places, or the cost of living?
Well, yeah, it's a really good point. So when you look at the CPI, there's a big piece of the CPI report that actually makes that is derived from housing. Now, when we're talking about housing in the CPI report, they're not talking about the cost of purchasing a home or interest rates or affordability on that side. They're talking about rents or the equivalent of rents. And so about a third of the report that makes up a CPI report, which is talking about, prices for the consumer, is derived from actual cost of living. And so in that situation, we have seen, and there's a lot of things that point to this in all the CPI indicators, that cost of living is actually much lower than we're actually seeing real time. But I think here in San Diego specifically, rents went up a lot higher than they maybe did in other areas, just due to the area that we were. Due to being in Southern California. So when you actually look at it and look at the indicators why, right now that could be the case, but rents and the equivalent of rents, housing is always a lagging indicator there. So I would see that with all CPI nationally, and then also in each of these cities, we might be on the high side of that because rents went up so high, but they've come down. But as it makes up year over year changes, we'll see how that really plays out and what the real time look is in another 3 to 6 months from there.
That makes a lot of sense. And now that you're saying that, it's also reminded me, I just did a video on talking about how someone had asked, like, if people are leaving California, then why do we have such a housing shortage? And it's like, it's a simple question, right? Like, how is that the case? And the truth is, like, the main part of the growth here in California in general was between 2008 and like 2018. That's where we saw this giant increase in the amount of people in California, and specifically in San Diego. And then we started to see it come down. But actually, over the last 12 months, we actually saw the population in California decrease, but the population in San Diego increased by like 1,000 people. So it essentially stayed flat. So while other places throughout the state, they're still seeing a population decline, here in San Diego, we're seeing more people move here. We are seeing people move away to live in more affordable areas. But I can tell you, I'm crazy busy with people that are relocating here, because that's still a big segment of San Diego. People can still work remote. They still want to live the life they want to live. They live in other expensive areas, but they don't feel like they're getting the lifestyle that they want for how much money they're spending. So we are getting people relocating here, and that affects rents, that affects buying houses. There's a lot of challenges involved with that. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Side note, I travel back and forth between Salt Lake City a lot. That's where our corporate office is. So I'm back there for meetings a lot. Something showed up on my news feed it was talking about, and there was an article written in Salt Lake City about people who had moved from California to Salt Lake City because they thought that it was going to be much more affordable, that now want to move back to California because it's actually not that much less affordable, or it's not as affordable as they thought it was. But when you look at San Diego specifically, and I know you and I are both a little impartial to San
A
Diego with
little
what we do
biased.
here, right?
You
We're a
can
little
say
biased.
it.
Um, but San Diego really, I mean, we've seen a lot of people even come down from Northern California to Southern California. When you look at California as a whole, you really need to break things out in a much smaller scale because it is so big. There's so many different parts. When you look at the Inland Empire, you look at the Central Valley, you look up north or the Bay Area compared to Southern California, it all
Yeah.
functions so differently, and there's very different trends in each of those different areas.
Yeah, I mean, even San Diego versus LA, like there was a pretty
Yeah.
large exodus from LA this last 12 months, and then we had an increase in population down here. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild looking at all that.
Yep.
What was I gonna say? I had something so brilliant to say, Danny, and I just
Gosh, I
completely
ruined it.
derailed.
Sorry.
Oh
It
my
was the whole
goodness.
Salt Lake City piece.
Jeez, it's okay. We'll move on from here. Case Sandberg is tuning in from San Diego. What is going on, Case?
Love it.
And I wish I knew how to pronounce this name. Hi from San Diego. What's going on? All right, let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, we are going to be getting into right after this. We're starting to talk about the housing market here in San Diego. So if you want to know about buying a house, if you want to know about selling a house, if you want to know anything about the market here, definitely drop a question in the comment section and we will get to you. All right. All right. All right.
Love it.
All right, man. Now let's talk about the housing market has now bottomed out and Americans are buying homes again. Danny, is it just me or does it feel like this article is like 2 months too late?
2 months too late, and it's not uncommon for the media to function
Yeah.
that way, right? And that's what's hard as a consumer to a lot of people who are looking to buy here. If you're looking or tracking interest rates or what's happening in the mortgage or in the real estate market through the media, they're not up to speed of what's going on real time.
Yep.
I posted something and we talked. I think we had talked plenty about it as well. But I mean, the market has been it's heated up and it's been so hot here. The homes that are getting under contract right now, or that have been getting under contract the last few weeks that we're seeing multiple offers in, those are going to take 30 days to close, and then those are going to come out. So that means they're going to close in end of April or probably in May, but that May report doesn't actually come out until June or July, depending on the report. So you're going to see home prices that are starting to significantly incline, but we won't actually see it in the reports where the media will start to do that for another couple of months. So yeah, we're already on that uptick. I mean, it is, if you're trying to time the bottom of the market, we're already on the upper edge of that movement going. It's getting hot everywhere. So
Yeah, it's been interesting to see what's going on. Like anecdotally, it's been a very interesting year. I got into 2 multiple offer scenarios today. We had a third offer that was accepted. More offers were coming in, and we were able to kind of slip in right before that happened. Single family homes seem to be very, very, very hot right now because of the limited inventory. But yeah, here's the thing. Like, take a look at this article, you guys. This is what Danny's talking about. So, well, first of all, I do want to say, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, Danny. I'm always very interested because I keep the notifications on my phone of like what's going on, like what are the news articles, what's happening, and I always love to see like what are the trends of the articles that we're seeing. At the very beginning of the year, there were all these articles written about how the San Diego housing market's going to collapse. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
It was bonkers. And then all the questions I get from our clients and from people that are tuning into our channel here is like, what's going on? It looks like the San Diego housing market's going to collapse because based off of one article or one prediction.
Right.
And then the Silicon Valley bank collapse, like that had it really slowed people's decisions down to want to buy a house because it's like, what is going on? I mean, with good reason,
Right.
And what I've noticed in the last week to week and a half, Danny, I'm curious if you feel the same thing. And if you think so in the comments, let us know in the comments. It seems like all those articles are flipping right now. They're all saying bottom market has already happened and the prices are starting to go up again. And like over and over again, that's what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. And it's because, and you and I had talked about this, really where we felt the uptick start when we were, boots on the ground. I think both of us can agree it really started to shift in a good direction the very beginning of the year. Come January 1st, things started to move and things started to roll in a different direction. And if you think of that theory and of where things are now, the numbers from closed sales of January, but more importantly, February, are now starting to come out in April's reports basing on February. Now they're going, oh, things are starting to tick up, where that started to happen in January. That's what that report is basing it off of,
Yeah.
is that uptick at that time. So we'll continue to see things climb. There's no way you won't be able to see that.
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying here, Danny. After 7 months of decline, like this is an article that just came out 6 days ago. After
Yep.
7 months of declines, home prices rose 0.8% in 8% in February.
Right.
Cool. That means those
Right.
were accepted offers in January.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
how delayed is this? This is the market that we're dealing with, and this is the data that they're going off of, and they're writing articles that are super delayed. I see this over and over and over again, and that's why it's tough for us and tough for me to be on this channel and give an opinion knowing that I'm going to get backlash, because people are like, oh, well, that's not what we're seeing in the articles. Yeah, because the articles are months behind of what's actually happening out there right now today. And I can tell you, we'll make this new prediction, and it's not really a prediction. It's just what's happening right now is things are heating up like crazy right now.
For
Like
sure.
crazy. This is the hottest it's been all year long.
Yep.
And in like September, when this month's data finally comes out, it's going to have this huge jump in home prices.
Totally.
And so I think
it's
anyone
going to be crazy to see those actual upticks come through. I mean, and that's why it's more important, honestly, if you're looking to move to San Diego or move anywhere, trying to figure out what's going on in the market, you need to be able to talk to a professional, a seasoned pro who's in it every single day, rather than somebody who's just what do they call them, an armchair quarterback, right? What's the equivalent of that for the real estate market? I mean, that's just
good question.
Yeah, you need to be able to know and talk to somebody like you, honestly, that sees and knows it. Somebody that has their ear to the ground and can know exactly what's happening. That's where the advice should be coming from. Because if you're waiting to see it in the media, you're probably too late.
Yeah. And it's always the analysts, like they're more often than not, they're actually not in the housing market, right? Like they're economists, they're talking about the whole economy as a whole. So they're going off of data that's old. It's just what it is. Like you can't go off of closed home statistics until homes close. When homes are pending or in escrow, that information is not available as to what the accepted offer is, and you don't even know necessarily if it's going to close. So like I'm not faulting them for that situation. But then a lot of these like the sites that aggregate the data and put it together into a useful form for us to be able to analyze, then it takes another 25 or 30 days to do that. So now we're talking the most recent data a lot of times is 2 months old.
Yep, exactly.
Getting some good questions in here. So Vipassana 123, what are some triggers or things to look out for that would enable inventory to make the market more balanced? Recession ? More lax zoning laws? What do you think, Danny? You want to start us off on this one?
That's a really, really good question. I mean, here's the thing that is tricky about where the market is today is we just simply don't have enough inventory, right? To your point, you brought it up, what's happening if people are leaving California? Why do we not have enough homes? This truly started back in 2008 after the mortgage crisis. Builders stopped building homes for multiple years, and we didn't stop creating housing formations. Housing formations is the need for homes, right? Every time adults grow up, they need their own home. People get divorced. That one home becomes two. There's multiple different situations where that's the case. We're creating millions of housing formations every year, and that didn't catch up, and they didn't start building homes for a long time. This is a big slingshot effect. It's going to take a really long time to be able to balance that market. As far as the inventory and the supply versus demand issue that we see. That's the first thing that comes to mind. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and I apologize, I'm distracted because I want to show you guys that I have a new series, you guys, where I take your questions and comments from my channel, and I'll make an entire video just analyzing what you're talking about or what question you have. So we can really.
I love your thumbnails, by the way, man. They're amazing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, we put a lot of work, a lot of effort into these thumbnails. But this new series, whenever you see this kind of style, it's literally me taking just a comment that you guys posted in one of my videos and spending a lot of time answering your comment. So this video right here, shameless plug, if you want to know more about like what's going on with inventory, this is a good video that you can go back and check out. But yeah, I agree. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what's not going to increase inventory, which we found out over the last 9 months, increasing the Fed funds rate or increasing mortgage rates We learned this the hard way because guess what happens? Yes, there's less demand out there, but what we didn't expect is there's also significantly less supply, which is
Yep.
a major, major issue. So like you can't just create supply by stopping people buying houses. Guess what happens to people that need to sell their house? They become buyers. So
Right.
like it's affecting them too. So and then the recession thing it's interesting too because in our minds is always what happened in the housing market collapse in 2008 and 2009, right? Like that's what's fresh on everybody's mind still
Right.
is
Right.
if
Right.
there's a recession, that means the housing market's going to collapse. But actually, if you look at history throughout California, more often than not in a recession, housing prices go like, well, maybe not like this, but they go up. They're actually increasing. And there are a lot of factors involved with that. But one of the ways that you can think about it is if we get into a situation where the economy is slowing, the Federal Reserve can react by decreasing the Fed funds rate. And ultimately, that's going to end up decreasing mortgage interest rates, and then people are going to have more buying power again. So
Right.
I don't know that there's any way around this besides building more homes. And I do believe zoning laws do need to get better. The federal, well, our state government has been releasing all these plans to like allow strip malls to be turned into like dense
Residential, dense using, dense
residential.
housing
Yeah.
units. Yeah.
And they're trying to make it a lot easier to make 4-unit properties on the zoning for like a single family home. So there are these things coming out, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to be easier for developers to actually make like affordable housing. It needs to be easier for them to go through the process. Because right now, when you're talking about someone building a development of like anywhere from 10 to 100 to 1,000 new homes, from the day where they like plan this out and actually submit a proposal to the day
Right.
that they actually break ground is usually 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
So like we know what's going to be built in the next couple of years, and it's not looking good. It's not what we need. So
Right.
yeah, I do think that it does need to be changed, but there's so much to it. There's so much to
Yeah.
it.
The lax zoning laws and building more is definitely something that needs to happen. But exactly to your point, that's going to take years to cycle through, right? And in a recession, two things happen. Historically, with the exception of 2008, home prices typically go up and interest rates typically go down,
Yep.
which it's kind of a chicken or the egg. If interest rates go down, there's more people interested. That's why prices go up, right? But I think a recession would actually work the adverse way and it would create prices to go up even more. There's no quick fix to this, unfortunately. If you're on the sidelines or trying to get into it, yeah, there's no super quick fix to be able to fix the problem that we have right now.
Yeah, it's tough. And especially in the situation where we're in, where like rates have slowly gone up and up and up and up and up so much that there are so many people that have been sitting on sidelines waiting for them to come for mortgage rates to come back in the 5s or the 4s.
Yep.
And the second that happens, recession or not, like the market's going to be flooded with new buyers.
Absolutely.
So,
And we've already started to see that as interest rates, and you said this earlier, they've been really, really volatile. So if you're trying to follow the media, just like the media as far as the housing reports, they're just equally as bad with interest
yeah.
rates, right? They'll talk and report about interest rates being really good when the last 2 or 3 days they could have been really bad, right? There was another article that interest rates are actually at 1-month highs today, but if you're not looking to lock a loan today, that's really irrelevant, right? Where are things trending over the long term? Where do they look like they're going over the next couple months, over the next 3 to 6 months, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider there. And I did want to pull this up. We have a lot of questions coming in, you guys. So definitely keep dropping your questions in. We're going to get to every single question in this chat before 8 p.m. You have until 8 p.m., right, Danny?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
I did want to show the slide, though, because look, what it keeps coming back to is how many homes we have for sale. What is we call in the industry, we call the inventory. How many homes are actively for sale here in San Diego County?
Isn't that great?
This time of year, and look, you have to keep in mind, this is looking, I like this view because you can see year by year right next to each other. So it shows, it helps to show the trend. Just keep in mind, we had some weird years here, right? Like with COVID, it kind of threw off these charts a little bit. But in general, we almost always peak the amount of homes that we have for sale in around June timeframe. And the reason is really simple. Most people are moving homes based on their kids' school schedule. So they're going to want to move once they're out of school and like have an easy transition, move into a new house. At this time of year, we should be going up. This is
Right.
2023, and we're
Right.
dive bombing here. This is bad. And the reason why the market is getting so hot isn't necessarily because there are so many buyers out there. It's because there are somewhat limited buyers out there that need to move because they're relocating or because their family's getting bigger or because they need downsize, like whatever. They don't really have much of a choice. They're almost forced into buying a house.
Yep.
And there's enough of them and not enough homes on the market to where it's really becoming an issue. And
sure.
it's not, it's tough right now, but it's about to get really freaking bad if this doesn't start going up.
Yep.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yep. It's just going to continue to get more and more difficult to get your foot in the door for sure. Yep.
It's making me nervous. Let's put some good vibes out there, you guys. We're all going to put some good vibes out there for the housing market here. Right. We had another question from Vipassana123. Is it fair to say that the market is hot when the number of transactions are down so much? I think I feel like I just kind of went over that accidentally. I feel like I just kind of answered that as far as yes, you're right. There aren't as many transactions. And from an industry perspective, there are going to be a lot of real estate agents leaving the industry this year. Yep. There's no question. It's been brutally tough to be a real estate agent in San Diego. Danny, we have less than 2,000 homes for sale in San Diego County, and we have 30,000 real estate agents.
It's crazy.
A lot of those agents are going hungry.
Absolutely.
And, I don't want this to be like a pitch for who to use, but I really would say that you should consider this if you have like a friend or just like an acquaintance or someone that you were recommended to use as a real estate agent. Make sure they're active in this market, because if they aren't, this market's changing on a weekly basis and you have to know what's going on.
1,000,000%.
Did we answer the question?
Yeah, it's interesting. Hot is relative, right? Hot meaning, I mean, hot, yes, there's multiple buyers, multiple offers on every single home that is listed right now. So yes, it's hot. There's not as many transactions, but I still think it's a hot market as far as the demand for the homes that are on the market. I think it's a good term to use.
I agree. Cool. All right. Arthur, relocating out of San Diego to sell or not to sell? That is a question. What are the pros and cons of being a landlord in San Diego? I have a bit of FOMO when I think about the future equity if I hold. Yeah, that is a great question, man. And there are a lot of considerations there. Have you been a landlord before? How do you feel about managing a property? Do you want to outsource the management to a property management company? And if so, would their costs, which can be quite high, are they going to be affordable enough for you to continue to, or at least not lose money on that property month to month? Can you buy another house while still owning this house? That's definitely going to be one. You want to touch on that a little bit, Danny, about how difficult it can be to apply for a mortgage on another house when you already have one house?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting when you're buying a home. So if you're relocating out of San Diego and you have a primary residence here, there's rules as far as how we qualify you based off of turning a vacating primary residence into a rental. And those rules and what we can use to qualify for income to be able to offset that mortgage are different now compared to what it would look like 1 year or 2 years from now. So if you're looking to do it, the advice that I would tell you is get with a mortgage professional and talk through the scenarios, whether you keep the property or whether you don't keep the property, and what that looks like. If you can actually, I am a firm believer of the value of owning real estate. So if you can afford to get into your new home and still keep your property here, especially because the value and the equity that you can build in Southern California, because all of the points that we're talking about, you just tend to hold your value, and you're going to continue to hold your value here. And there's going to be a lot of equity to be made here. So if you can afford to buy your new home and be able to keep this property and see it through for at least for the next little while, and see if you can afford to do it as a landlord, there's no telling that you don't have to keep this forever, right? If you can buy your new property, you could try it for a year or two, and then you could sell it almost certainly you're going to sell that property for more than you are today. So if you can hold on to that and sell it later, it might be advantageous to at least see if you can do it. If down the road, being a landlord isn't for you, then by all means, reach out to Dan and his team and get it listed, right? But if that is the case, there's so much equity to be able to be made here over time.
Yeah, there's so many considerations that are like buzzing through my head as you're talking there, Danny. And
Right.
you made a lot of good points. A couple of things worth mentioning are for sure, like figure out, are you going to be able to cash flow? If you rent it out based on what you're paying on your mortgage right now, I don't know how long you've owned your house, how much equity you have in your house. Are you going to be able to cash flow? Are you going to be negative at the end of the month? Again, if you need a property management company, then where's that going to put you? And you can actually go on Zillow and Redfin right now, and they'll give you a Zestimate type of thing for rentals. So not that that's the most accurate, but that's a place to start. You could take a look and see, like, is it within the ballpark of a number where you're not actually going to lose money every month? And consider, of course, if it's a single family home, you also need to consider like at least an extra 10% for like repairs and upgrades and different things that can happen. And if something major happens, is that gonna put you in a really tough financial situation? Can you afford that second house while you own this house? Those are all the questions that you need to ask yourself. But of course, like people always ask, how do people afford homes here in San Diego? Well, more often than not, people have built wealth off of other properties. So I'm definitely not, Danny and I are not going to sit here and say, yeah, sell that thing, because like if you can make it work to rent it and you're not scared of being a landlord, you can absolutely try it out. Now, one other very important thing to consider, and this is why my wife, Steph, and I ultimately ended up selling our house, is if you live in your house for 2 years and then you sell your house, you get, and you're married, then you can essentially have $500,000 in profit on selling that house and pay the government $0. There are very few times in life where you can have massive capital gains and not pay capital gains tax. Now, if you rent out your house for 3+ years, you no longer get that opportunity. So if you're looking to own it for 5 years, and let's just say housing prices stay flat, and right now you're setting on 300,000 in equity, then you actually might be in a situation that's not advantageous, because you could sell it and have to pay 33% tax on your capital gains. So a lot of considerations there. Hopefully that starts to point you in the right direction of consideration of what makes sense for you.
For sure. There's two things. Sorry, real quick. Two things to come to mind to help answer on that. We both have ideas bouncing off each other.
This is a good one. I like this question.
It is good. Two things. One, to touch a little bit more on what it looks like to qualify. So like Dan said, it's a great advice to go to Zillow or go to something like that to be able to see or get an idea of what you could rent your property for. Now, keep in mind, if we're using that to be able to qualify you to purchase a new property, if you're vacating your primary residence, we can't count all of that to offset your payments. We can only count 75% of that on the mortgage side of things. So let's say your payment is $4,000 a month, and let's say you can get $4,500 a month in rent. That's great, but we can't use all $4,500 a month and show positive income or positive cash flow there. We're using 75% of that 4,500, or in that situation, that's roughly what? I'm not 3,200, somewhere around there, 3,250 or whatever that would be. So you're actually negative $750 a month. So you need to make sure you cash flow. And to Dan's point, as far as keeping that property, my wife and I, we probably won't be in the home we're in forever, but when we sell, we're a big believer in owning real estate. But the home we're in today probably won't translate to a perfect rental. So, you've got to think about, your neighbors, the neighborhood, what you could actually get for that. Is there going to be upcoming expenses, all those kind of things. So there's a lot to think about in that. But like Dan said, hopefully at least we're giving you a couple nuggets to be able to think through some of those things.
All right, you guys see what I'm talking about, how smart Danny is? Why I bring him on, I look like a dummy, because he's talking about all the nuances of loans. And the main point of the story is, if you want to rent your place out and buy something else, talk to someone that can guide you through the process, and just know whether you can afford another house, if that's your goal, or not. Afford 2 houses at the same time. So thank you, Danny, for all that valuable information. Vipassana 123. I feel like it should be Pasanya, right? What do you think, Danny? Vipassanya. I don't know.
We should ask. We should find out. Yeah.
For example, pricing hasn't dipped that much lower because inventory is so low, because no one wants to sell. The amount of homes sold is a lot lower. Pricing hasn't dipped that much. And I feel like I need to read this twice. I feel like we kind of went over this. I think you had asked this question and then we went over it. Yes, inventory is really, really low. But how's it, like, the home values are going up right now, and they have the last couple of months. In fact, I can show you a slide here real quick. This is InfoSparks. This is San Diego County. This is showing, we had this major spike last year all the way up until April. And that's where we really peaked out at the median price home, attached or detached, at $865,000. Then we had about 2% per month decrease in home values up through January, or through December. And then January, it actually started to pick back up. And I can only imagine, because this is showing March, once April is here, we're going to be right back up to where we were.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back up. So, so yes, when we're looking at the prices and what's going on with that, inventory is so low that we're seeing prices come right back up to where they peaked. I think that's where we're going to be.
Yep.
All right, what else we got here? Oleg, basic question, but I think a lot of new shoppers would like to know. What is the best way to check taxes in Mello-Roos for a particular property? Is there a visual map showing areas with Mello-Roos? That is a good question. Danny, do you have any simple solutions for this?
That is a really, really good question. I don't have any specific questions as far as Mello-Roos go. I can tell you from taxes, and taxes is tricky, right? From our side, and where Zillow and Redfin and some of those national websites are extremely inaccurate, is Prop 19 makes taxes work differently in here in California. And so when you buy a home here in California, your property tax basis is stuck there. Now, a good estimate, if you're buying a home not with Mello-Roos, a good estimate is to account for about 1.2 to 1.25% of the purchase price. Now, a really, really simple way to look at it, if you're looking at homes of $800,000, if you just drop the last 3 zeros off the purchase price, you can account that your property taxes are about $800 a month. If you're looking at a home at 1.2 million, you drop the last 3 zeros, your property taxes are about $1,200 a month, right? That's with the exception of Mello-Roos. Mello-Roos, there's not, to my knowledge, there's not a specific area where you can actually go in and take a look at what areas or communities have Mello-Roos and which don't. We obviously have access to additional information on our side, and I know you do on your side as well. But I don't know if the general consumer can see which areas have Mello-Roos or not. I definitely want to put my team on that and see if we can get an answer to that, because that's great information. That would be great.
And Oleg, I just want to say, I really love your logo. I'm just realizing it's Lego, but all the letters are just rearranged, and that's phenomenal.
Oh, nice.
Well done on that. Maybe you can help me make a logo.
Yeah, well done.
So just to clarify what Danny's saying here as far as taxes, because it's simple but also confusing at the same time. In California, for the most part, taxes suck. It's one of the worst states when it comes to taxes. We get taxed for this and that and this and that, and it's just absolutely crazy. But one of the huge benefits in California is when you own property over time, your tax basis and what you pay for property taxes is not going to increase like home values are increasing. So if home values are increasing, let's say 5% every year, the tax base can only increase by 3%, I think is where 2%. 2%, only by 2% every single year. So if you've lived in a house for 30 years, your property tax that you're paying is going to be very, very minimal. So when you're looking at Zillow and Redfin and it shows the property tax on a property, that's what the current owner is paying. They're looking at tax records. They're showing what the current owner is paying. That has nothing to do with what you're going to pay. When you buy the house, it's going to be reassessed based off of the purchase price, and you're going to be paying taxes based off of that amount. And in San Diego, it's anywhere from 1.1 to 1.3% in general. But like Danny said, a good rule of thumb is like 1.2 or 1.25%. As far as Mello-Roos, just know that this is, so if anyone doesn't know what Mello-Roos is, it's basically an additional tax that is, its sole purpose is to help build up a new community. It's to put in new streetlights and landscape the community and put in a shopping center down the street and help pay for new schools. So a lot of people look at Mello-Roos and are like, I'm paying that much extra money a year, it's going to nothing. No, it's absolutely going to something. It's building up your community. It's making your home more valuable because it's building up that local community. So a couple things to just keep in mind on that is it usually lasts somewhere around 20 to 25 years. There's always an end date on it. So if you're looking at homes that were built before the 2000s, then it's probably not going to have Mello-Roos. And if it does, it might even be on the end of the life of the Mello-Roos. So you can always check and see like, oh, there's only 6 months left on the Mello-Roos. Okay, cool. Like either we don't care or we could ask the seller to pay it all off. Like that's an option as well. So if you're looking at homes built like they're older than 2000s, then you're probably going to be okay. The main areas with Mello-Roos is going to be Chula Vista. They have some pretty high Mello-Roos in Chula Vista. I've seen it up in like San Marcos, some of the new builds up there in Escondido. Those are the main areas that I've been seeing.
New Chula, not old Chula, like old downtown Chula. New Chula, East Lake. Yeah. Yep. Some of those areas, and then some of the new developments. If you're surrounded by development that has all been developed from 2010 on, I would say it's probably safe to assume that you have Mello-Roos. And so calculating whatever those property taxes are, add a couple $100 to that just to be safe. But then if you're really diving into things, reach out to Dan or I, or reach out to whoever you're working with to be able to find out exactly what those costs are.
And it should also say in Redfin and Zillow, they pull all the data from the local MLS, the multiple listing services, where we enter in the data for the properties.
Yeah.
So there's always a possibility that it could be incorrect, but more often than not, it's going to show it. The downside is if there's no Mello-Roos, it doesn't say no Mello-Roos. It just eliminates that whole line.
Right.
So it can be a little bit tricky to be like, where is the Mello-Roos? Where is it supposed to be? But if it does have Mello-Roos, it's going to be listed on those sites.
Yep.
Great questions tonight, Danny. This is good. I'm liking it.
Great.
Mr. Jim Lee, the best first-time buyer neighborhoods in San Diego, part 2 or deep dive. Was the first one not good enough? Like, what else are you looking for? It sounds like what you need is a discovery session, which is something that I offer for free. Check in the description down below. You can actually get direct access to my calendar, and we can figure out what is the best neighborhood for you. Now, if you don't want to do that, the video coming out this Friday is going to be pretty cool. It is the coolest neighborhoods in San Diego. I go over about a dozen different neighborhoods and communities and cities that are the best neighborhoods for like nightlife and restaurants and trendy places and cool things to do. So you might get some value out of that, but if not, reach out to me directly and I can help you customize something for you.
Love it. You put such good, valuable info out there. I'm not going to lie. I have been known to sit back and watch your YouTube channel from my couch with my dogs at night.
I get the funniest story. What trips me out is when people watch it on their TV, and I have clients that are like, husband and wife, and the wife will be upstairs and the husband will be watching me on the main TV, and she'll be like, are you watching Dan again? Like, it's really, really weird because anyway, we're not going to get into that, but I appreciate you. Mr. Kite wants to know, do you think Oceanside still has a lot of upside potential price wise? Yes, absolutely. In fact, again, I'm pushing a lot of my videos this week because now I'm at the point where I have made a lot of content that's already answered your questions. Check out the video I made this last week. It's about some of the things that are coming soon to Oceanside. Absolutely, it has seen, in especially different parts of Oceanside, have seen a tremendous amount of appreciation over the last 3 years compared to the rest of the San Diego. But there's 100% still upside. And I think based on future developments and what they're planning to do to the area, I think they're planning. I have to assume, based on what I know, that there's more new developments going into Oceanside than any other coastal community in San Diego.
It feels that way. I would agree 100%. There's still a ton of upside going into Oceanside. Yeah, it's a fantastic area to invest in right now.
Maybe with the exception of Chula Vista Bayfront. So that's the whole thing on its own.
There's a lot of great things going on all over.
Yep. All right, Vipasanya 123. I'm just going with Anye. I'm going with it. Hopefully I'm right there. Vipasanya. Is it realistic to get a jumbo loan or FHA loan in this market accepted, or are you really only competitive if you have at least 10 to 20% down? What's a healthy DTI for an $850,000 ish loan? Danny, I think you're obvious. She's asking you here. Obviously, I also think that it's interesting because she's very savvy on part of this question, but I think maybe there's some confusion on a little part of it as well.
Yeah, I would love to have a more in-depth conversation. If you want to connect, I would love to connect with you, Vipasana or Pasanya. But a couple different things. Yes, I think you can absolutely still get offers accepted with an FHA loan or less money down in this market if you're working with the right team. I do think it takes strategy. I think it takes talking to the listing agent, understanding what's important to the seller, all that kind of stuff. I know that's one of the things that Dan is really incredible at, but that's something that you can get those accepted right now. It is, I'm not personally seeing that we're losing a lot of offers to, cash buyers right now. That's not where we're
Agreed.
at in this market. You just have to put your best foot forward and be in a good situation. So I don't think you have to have 10 to 20% down. You could put as little as 3 to 5% down. And we can strategize about the best way to be able to put that together. Curious about the jumbo loan versus FHA loan. So jumbo loans, typically the competitive options with jumbo loans, you're really going to want at least 15% down. There are 10% jumbo loans down. Now, when I say jumbo, let me kind of correct and make sure that people understand. So San Diego County is what's called a high cost area. And so the conforming loan limit for the country is 726,200. It's a weird number.
And
Let's call
sorry,
it
I'm gonna
725.
pause real quick. Essentially, just think it of like two main type. Well, let's say three main types of loans. There's all sorts of different loan packages, but you have
Yep.
like FHA loans, you have conventional loans, and then you have jumbo loans. And once you
Yep.
get to a certain price threshold, you go from conventional to jumbo, and there are different qualifications and different things involved with that. Am I somewhere near the mark on there?
No, totally.
Okay, cool.
And I'm probably getting too deep into the woods between
No,
the
no,
different
that's good. I
all
just
of
wanted a little preface there.
Yep. No, that's perfect. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So there's different ranges. So the conforming limit for a lot of areas in the country, the difference between a conforming loan and a jumbo loan is roughly that 725 range, 726,200. But here in San Diego County, that number is 977,500. So you're still considered you're not a jumbo loan at the 850, 900, even 950 range, which is kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah.
You could buy $1 million home with 5% down and still be a conforming loan. It's kind of wild. As far as your DTI and what is a healthy DTI, healthy is relative, and so a lot of that it's more of putting together a good consultation and diving into what your lifestyle is, what your goals are, and what's coming up in your life over the next few years. You could technically get approved up to a DTI depending on the loan program, even into the high 40s, low 50s as far as a DTI. What I would say is a healthy DTI. I think it would be good to be able to look at your DTI, or debt to income ratio, for those who don't know what DTI stands for. I'd like to see that in the low to mid 40s. I think is a healthy range for sure. Obviously, the lower the better, but I know that's difficult, especially here in San Diego and with prices and with where the cost of living and everything is.
Yeah. And just another thing I wanted to mention, we're talking about jumbo loans. One of the big considerations that you should know about is just how the rates are going to vary and be different between jumbo and conforming. And one thing that Danny, you've taught me is that when we're looking at jumbo loans especially over the last like 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that, the jumbo rates have been really up, down, up, down, up, down. And you can see what I'm talking about on this chart here. I'm going to remove FHA. So this dark blue is conventional. You can see it's a lot more stable for the most parts, obviously going up and down over the long term. But this light blue, if we get rid of this, you can see how much this is jumping up and down like a
heartbeat. Yeah,
I know. I was just going to ask, like, what's that machine called where it's doing the heartbeat? So that's one of the big considerations right now of like, where are the jumbo loans at as far as rates compared to conforming? But obviously, if you're in a situation to afford a home by needing a jumbo loan, then I think it's a whole different conversation than what V Pasana/Pasanya is asking.
For sure.
All right.
Pasana, I would love to connect with you and dive into things a little bit more, for sure.
So we are getting to the top of the hour. If we have any more questions, throw them in and we'll answer them real quick here. But before we do, Internet is asking, what is going on, Internet? Do you believe rent prices will ever go lower? Danny, let's get your crystal ball out here. What do you think? What are you thinking?
I mean, it's interesting when you actually look at how you gauge rent prices, right? So, like, for example, the CPI report, when you're looking at rents or equivalent of rents, we have seen that those have actually come down a little bit compared to the cost of living in other areas. So they have come down, but we don't necessarily feel that on a regular basis. The reason why, when you look at that report, you're looking at maybe signing a lease and then not moving in for a month or two, and then maybe that was a 12 to 15 or 12 to 18-month lease. And so those leases that were done there versus where things are now, it's showing that rents have come down a little bit. I haven't personally seen that rents have moved down, and I don't
No.
see, just as home prices are continuing to go up, I don't see that there's a lot of um, I don't see that there's a lot of factors that are going to put pressure on causing rent prices to go lower.
Yeah.
Personally,
I mean, it's still an inventory crisis, right? Like the amount of
right?
homes obviously we focus a lot on this channel about homes for sale, but inventory crisis also affects rents. And
Yeah,
we have high inflation, which is impacting those prices. Um, yeah, I mean, I want to say every housing market is going to have its ups and downs, right? Like over time, it goes up and to the right, but it's going to have ups and downs. Like we're not here saying housing prices are always going to go up, up, up. But
yep,
here's one of the factors that you should keep in mind is, especially here in San Diego, I think it's getting more and more like this across the country. If you buy a house with 20% down and try and rent that out, you're going to lose money every single month. There
yeah,
aren't really situations right now anymore in San Diego because it's become so expensive to purchase a house that if you
right.
buy a house with 20% down and rent it out at current rates, you're going to lose money. So at some point, that's going to have to balance out in my mind. And whether that means home prices are going to come down or rents are going to go up, I can't tell you for sure, but I really think that we're in the situation where home prices are going to continue to go up and rents are going to have to go up to keep up. That's the way that I see it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I unfortunately, I mean, it would be great from an affordability standpoint. It would be great if rent and owning a home became less expensive over time,
Yeah.
right? That would be wonderful if that was the case. Um, I don't see that rents are going to get much less expensive. If you buy or if you own a home currently, or if you have bought a home in the last year or so, rates will most likely be coming down in the next year or two, and that will give you an opportunity to have a more affordable payment by refinancing at that point. But oftentimes, if a landlord bought a home over the last year or two, and those, if they refinance and save money, they're not going to pass that on to their renter,
Yeah.
and so that's a difficult pickle. I don't see a lot of things that point to rents coming down.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that I'm pretty sure you were on when we were talking about this is total random segue, but talking about affordability and pricing. The Dream for All, did we talk
Yeah,
about that together? So we had mentioned on this channel about this amazing new program from California to help first-time home buyers purchase a house with up to 20% down payment. And there were going to be no monthly payments for you associated with that 20% that they were going to give you to help purchase the house.
yeah,
Um, Unfortunately, that lasted 8 days, nine
yeah,
days
a week
before
and
it
a
was
half.
fully
Yeah,
funded, which is absolutely wild. $300 million gone like that. So, I don't. It's tough, you guys. People think, oh, lender and real estate agent, they just want housing prices to go up. But heck no, man. I would have a way easier life if it were a neutral market and I could help more people. And that's just not the case. It's just not the reality that we're living in. And until we find a solution for more homes here in San Diego, this is going to continue to happen. So I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. So Danny, give us something positive to end off of. What's positive right now?
Oh man, positivity. Well, so in touching base on, we've talked about inflation. We've talked about
Yeah.
inflation here in San Diego and some of those things specifically. We know that inflation is coming down, but one of the biggest leading indicators of the CPI, or the inflation, the cost of prices to the consumer, is the PPI, the producer price index. Now that peaked at around 11%, and that's all the way down. The most recent report came down to 2.7%. So that's leading, and typically what that means, or what that's showing, the CPI report, and the regular inflation to the general consumer typically follows that, and it's a little bit behind, it's a little bit lagging, but we're trending in the right direction with inflation. Now, the Fed may still raise rates one more time in their upcoming meeting on May 2nd.
It's gonna
But
be
that doesn't,
interesting to see. Yeah.
what's that?
So it's gonna be interesting to see. I think we expect them to raise it a little bit, but I like where
Yeah.
you're headed after this.
Yeah, they're expected to raise it one more time, but they're as far as what they've said, if they stick to their plan, that's probably going to be the last time they raise weights, and then they'll just wait and see things to happen and see some of these different reports. Now, in addition to May 2nd, on May 10th, there's another CPI report that comes out that really, I think, is going to show a lot of positive information for inflation moving in a good direction, because housing is going to be very different in that specific report. So we'll see how it all comes, but the shining star is rates are going to trend in a positive direction. I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball of what that looks like or exactly where they're going to be. Um, if you are looking to get into a home, please reach out to a professional and try to make up a plan to be able to get in sooner than later, because you will benefit getting in sooner than later. And then you'll always be able to refinance and take advantage of those savings in the future while your home's still building a ton of equity.
There you go. I love it. We're going to have you on May 11th, and either we're going to praise you for being right and accurate, or we're all going to throw rocks and tomatoes at you, Danny. So
putting it on my calendar. Let's do it. Either way.
Appreciate that. Chris says the only reason rent prices will go lower is if apartments across the region would become more affordable to compete. But we live in California. It's never affordable. If you're somewhere, say Las Vegas, Austin, Phoenix, rents dropping by leaps and bounds is more realistic than California. And I tend to agree with you. But we're going to leave it on that positive note about rates are going to come down soon. And that is exactly what we're hoping for, especially my wife and I, because we just bought a house and we're looking to refinance when we can. That's going to be fantastic. If you do not follow him yet, Danny_D_IG. Danny, you're the man. Thanks so much for being on today. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate us going over, and we're definitely going to do this again soon.
Love it. Absolutely. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you soon.